Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. Welcome to holiness. I just asked Jesus, can we go deeper on today's lesson? He goes, always. Okay. Let's just see what he has to say here. I see how helpful these light circles are for focusing on the real. Feel the real. I love that. It's such a great song. Say it. Yeah, we're so used to playing in the feeling of the unreal. Using sensory perception to convince ourselves that we're alive when we're pretending like we're dead. It just brings the picture in that mind of Jesus showing me that little dog. It's hilarious. Dog videos are so hilarious. You know, so the dog, let's go to the vet, and the dog would literally play like it was dead. Let's go to Jesus. You know, and you hear these like little grumbles every now and then. Did you start to see it's a play? This is hilarious. Like there's 3 amazing pictures of Jesus, and then there's Mary, the other Jesus, and Jesus is back here, and you start to see, look, if you're not seeing that you're surrounded by Jesuses, then you're definitely in hell. You see no error. So devoted to Jesus. Now, how does he get all of us crunched into the same place? How does that happen? Because it's a magnet. Like I said, you're going to make a phone call and you can just be sure after a while. You just get used to it. You know, at first it's like, that's a surprise. You call somebody on the phone and they're telling you they're about talking to Jesus. It's a reminder, talk to Jesus. You know, like that call this week where she's telling me, yeah, I'm just noticing when I'm not listening, that's for me to remind me. It does take devotion to ourselves, really, and deep looking. And looking. And looking. And yawning. Because that's how that whole energy you just yawn it out. And I was so grateful when Muji said that. He said, you know, that's sometimes how the energy, and now I can ask Jesus directly. So I'll ask him directly about it. But I remember like I was in community and in an expression session, I started yawning and the reflection was not good. Go somewhere else to do that. But that was my own doubt thought. Do you see about it? It was just a huge release happening and just releasing. I can ask Jesus now. And if he would tell me it's not releasing, I'm equally happy to hear that, because that's love. See, I know he will only stand for truth. So just like we're looking at the movies to go, okay, Jesus, is this divine expression or is this holding? Am I holding on to guilt somehow? Beating myself with a wet noodle, but it feels like a sharp stick with a nail in it. And I'm beating myself with a beehive of stings. And he shares how it's necessary, this purification, this deep looking with him, for those deeper revelations to come. Because there has to be an openness because of the the beehive cloud. And so we don't see that we're playing in making the bees and then playing with the bees and then complaining about being stung by the bees and then putting the honey so that they stick to us like this. And then it feels like, oh, I can't get rid of these thoughts. But when the ego says it can't get rid of something, it wants it to keep it. See how Jesus says you give away to keep? You try to push it out there. That's the ego's way of keeping it, keeping the beehive. Bzzz. And he's reminding me about go all the way. See, if you kind of go half, little halvesies on the looking, and even if you finish 20, just do a check-in again on the front of it just to see, is there anything we need to see? It's like the ego's going to go like this. Oh, just make sure you ask Jesus if you're really done, because you'll see it takes a little while because we really don't want to look so deeply. And in the beginning of the text, the hearing's not as clear as it's going to be at the end of the text, because it gets clearer and clearer. The yeses, the nos, the this ways. And when the mind is trained, it's always looking now. Instead of looking for an opportunity for death, it's looking for an opportunity to see things differently. That's the flip. That's the happy dream. Oh, another opportunity. There are times when it's like, I'd rather, I'd rather not talk to Jesus. Not often, though. It's very brief because you see that you're speaking to yourself as an infinite being. It would be a limitation. And pretty soon, and somebody's asking me about that today, like pretty soon, it's true, like you can practice with a brother and you just go to them and ask. I can see how that's helpful because I didn't really want to go to a brother and ask him anything. I was too proud. But somehow, again, Jesus wins us over and he says, no, you've got to ask me. Your brother's just a symbol of asking me until you're going to ask me nonstop. Okay, what's this? What do I do next, Jesus? And soon you're just peaceful. It would be unnatural. See, it becomes unnatural to do anything other than, well, you're not really doing anymore. You can't find a doer. Something's happening, but it's not as like that concrete kind of, I have to do this. Whenever the ego says that, that means I have to keep a piece of personal identity. The shoulds and the shouldn'ts. See, the ego makes all the rules and then says you should do this. And it feels, he's saying it's really helpful to be reminded of that lens effect, the iris, like the iris of an eye, and opens up and you have a little view and he's going to show you something. You're going to see there's nothing down there. You'll see that it's wanted. It's truly desired. And it's like, oh, this makes sense. But just notice that because he knows it's going to happen, that consciousness doesn't want to see what he's showing. And then it can go really quickly into the game of guilt. I did something wrong game. And just start to see that, no, that's just the iris closing, trying to shut out the light. Guilt is a light shut out. The aperture on the lens, just closing up. Like on the Star Trek, you had to wait for the wormhole to open again so they can go through it. You don't have to wait. but it'll pretend. See, that wormhole will go, oh, okay, now that'll be a few more days before I can see that I'm infinite. No, you can just look right now. Jesus, am I infinite? But that's the play. The play is to relish guilt. Jesus. So let's just check in, see if there's any of that guilt relishing going on. Then we can just admit it. Jesus, am I relishing guilt? Yawn that out. When Jesus shows you something, you will not feel guilty. You can ask him, Jesus, when you show me something, no. The guilt is always the denial. Jesus doesn't know what guilt is. You can ask him, Jesus, do you know what guilt is? Because our true nature doesn't know what guilt is. That's why he could go on a cross on perfect peace. See, if you don't know what guilt and fear is at all, if it's totally out of, because the light doesn't know what it is, there's no difference. Just yawn away the ego. That sounds good. You get more and more relaxed. So you're like the little puppies. They're hilarious. Do you know how fast they learn? See, then we become the happy learner. Like we worked on them for days on certain things, but let me tell you, it took them about 2 nanoseconds to learn. You want me to rub your tummy? Like this. The happy learner. The old legs like they're on their back. That's the happy learner. That's all Jesus is trying to do. You know, but you can just see they're just totally open. They got their little belly out there, the little, you know. Jesus, let's ask him if it can be that easy for us, really. He says, of course, because you're infinite beings. So God is the strength in which I trust. So I see he's bringing us back here. Yeah, Jesus doesn't go at the end of the day, did you do your lessons? And all the guilt. Oh, I didn't do my lessons for today. Now I got to restart this whole thing tomorrow. Sometimes he says that's helpful with lessons. Do them now. That's what he said. We can do it now. We can just go deep now. Yeah, we just finished that chapter on trust. It takes a lot of trust to do a Course in Miracles. It's a marathon. But you don't have to. It's not necessary. All you have to do is see you want to usurp the power of God by being a little person, and then just give that up. Like Ramana, we can do the fast method, lie on down on the floor, and we're going to pretend like we die. That's what he did. He slid down there. Let me see. And then he realized, wait a minute, there's something here that doesn't die. This world's not worth scrap. I think he was 16, you know. It took the money his brother gave him for school and spent it for a train ticket. Jumps on a train, goes over and throws all his garments at the last rupees he has. He throws them in a lake or something. It's like, Okay, I don't need anything. I'm done. Goes and crawls into a temple in Tiru and goes, lives down there. And then kids would come and throw rocks at him down there. He just ignored it. He just stayed as light. Because he knew it wasn't true. So he didn't invest in the untrue. He made no investments in the untrue. He didn't really have to do anything. Suddenly, they could see he must have been maybe 16 years old or something. Then the word got out that there was this kid that was so devoted. And then disciples started coming. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't advertise. Okay, I'm sitting on a hill now. I need some disciples. He just didn't do scrap. He just sat with love, with light, as light. That's it. Just stayed as light. Didn't have to do anything. I need do nothing. He'd sit there. Then his mom came to try to talk him into going home. He wouldn't go. So eventually she came and joined up with him. And then his mom passed away, and then they built a little shrine at the foot of Arunachala. And so then he started hanging out there. He just started hanging out where his mom was. And then suddenly a whole ashram got built around him. And he consented to wear, David said, his little diaper. That's all he would wear. He didn't own anything. He didn't own a single thing. I think the two things you could see him with was the little loincloth and his staff. That's it, his walking staff. And then he'd make his little daily walks up to Arunachala. It was right out his back door, literally, of the ashram. You just go straight up Arunachala right there. And just simple. And beings would come from all over the world. Sometimes he would talk just because, as he would say, silence is the greatest teaching. That's what Jesus is reminding me. He's teaching us here. Silence. I could say I was so unfamiliar with it because there was a desire not to be familiar with it. But as the desires burn out in the light, as Jesus burns all the chaff and leaving only the good wheat, then just a natural silence. You just don't have that many thoughts about anything. And if you do, then you just say, Jesus, I have a desire for a bunch of passel of thoughts. Do I need to be thinking about this? And he'll say, yes, I'm talking to you now. That's a good thing for you to hear. Or no, you don't have to give that another thought. Then you just drop it. It's good to ask him, Jesus, did I follow you today? It's comforting when he says yes. But then it becomes just natural to follow him. Actually, I don't think after a while you can tell another way, actually. Because the desire is what makes us try to be independent. And once you just keep going to him all the time, you just see that's the only real thing. Jesus, is there anything I need to look at today that I look at? And then I would have like these little nighttime fireside chats with them. Oh, speaking of which, I still need to post those notes on fireside chats. They're just strongly encouraged. Sit down with them and type out a question. You'll be so surprised. And how clear it is. Even going back and reading those notes from like February and just hearing the voice right about the time the book came in. You go back and look, oh, that's really on point. And the interesting thing about it is, you know, even over time, whatever came out for that book has stood the test of the questions. Because I always ask them, I'd go back now. If he said to me one sentence in that book needed to be changed, I'd change it and redistribute it. You know, I just totally one period. Jesus, you want me to, because you see that that's the only thing that's valued. If I was reading through there and I found something like in Helen's notes where it said God made time, like I made an error somehow and didn't hear him right, I'd take it out and redistribute the book. I'm asking him now. I don't hear anything, but maybe he will at some point go, okay, that served, and now you just go change it. It's for me. But we start to see that we've been talking to the light for a very long time. All of us. There's not one of us that comes to this that hasn't been talking to the light. But it is precious to see, like Anna, Maria, when you just see, and it's like that reckoning, wait a minute, this has been here the whole time. Yeah, if he actually said stop distributing the book, I would too. You know, I don't have, I just ask him now, Jesus, is this still in service to God? And I hear yes, so okay, it's still out there. I guess at that point, you really know you're following because you don't. Nothing else has value. So we're on lesson 47 today, right? 46. Did I go ahead?
God's strength in each.
That's what I thought. 47. He's a strength that we were talking about trust. Want to make sure. Yeah, he's bringing my attention to the, oh, so much love in this. You start, when you really start paying attention, you just feel so much love. To believe that you can is to put your trust where trust is unwarranted. He's saying, look how much you put your trust where it's unwarranted. This is a great reminder. Jesus, will you show me any other places where my trust, I'm putting trust and unwarranted? I'm asking, so you don't want us to look at this, where trust is unwarranted and justify fear, anxiety, depression, anger, and guilt. The justification of guilt. Jesus, do I like to justify guilt? He's using guilt. He says you're using guilt to justify fear, anxiety, depression, anger, and sorrow. See, they're like these, yeah, these little protection loops held in the mind. Oh, here you go. So he's pointing me to who can put his faith in weakness and feel safe. So let's just ask whether or not we have a desire for experience to try and feel safe through fear. Is there any desire under there, Jesus, that I think fear is heaven? Do I have any belief that anxiety is heaven? After a while, you don't know what that is, actually. Because you see, in truth, we don't know what anxiety is. It's a perception. It's a perception of fragmentation. I'm talking to him about, so we believe that safety comes in fragmentation. The fragmentation is safety and comfort. That love comes from fragments. So all these experiences are all fragments. Anxiety, fragment, depression, fragment, anger, fragment, sorrow, fragment. You can ask them, are these all just fragments? Yeah, because they're not perceptive wholeness. They're partial. Because there's only love and fear is a fragment. You can ask them, Jesus, fear, it's a fragment, expression of fragmentation. Desire to experience fragmentation. So do I relish putting my faith in fear? I'm willing to look directly. Any faith at all in fear? You could show me. Okay, how about any kind of faith in anxiety, being anxious? I could see, I really didn't see that anxiety. You didn't want to see it. Okay, there it is. The desire, the experience of anxiety. Like before you see its desire, it just seems like that's the way things are. Really, till you start looking at Jesus in the Course, you just don't really. I'm just asking, was I playing that depression game? Just talking, have a little talk with him. A little fireside chat with Jesus. Did I feel, was there a desire to feel safety in depression? Yes. Mm-hmm. Is it still there? No. So you just go till he says no, even if he shows it to you. I still ask him. Okay, is there any remnants of trying to find safety in anger? Willing to see it. Oh, he says, look at your desire to find heaven in anger. Oh. And trying to find heaven in sorrow. Are there any remnants of trying to find heaven in sorrow, Jesus? Do I like putting faith in these weaknesses? Just keep going with them till he says no. And then those little eddy currents get less and less because there's no fuel. There's no desire fueling them. There's nothing that can get hold of that. Then we're like the little, you want me to rub my tummy? We can be comforted. We can feel whole. We don't use form anymore as a means for happiness. Or guilt to push love aside. I think it feels really good just to sit with him and just really fall into this vast silence of infinite. Close your eyes and begin as usual by repeating the idea for the day. Then spend a minute and two searching for life where you invested in fear, dismissing each one by telling yourself, God is the strength in which I trust, and slip past all concerns related to your own sense of inadequacy. You must also gain an awareness that confidence in your real strength is fully justified in every respect and in all circumstance. Let's just sit for a few minutes with him on this. This sounds good. God is the strength in which I trust. Okay, Jesus, give it to me. Do I have any places in there? Situations in my life where I've invested in fear. We can just let him guide our minds. The mind. I was asking him about mind wandering using the lessons, and he says it's very helpful because the mind wandering is a form of fear. You know how like you're in the middle of trying to look at a desire and then you suddenly you're thinking about taking a trip to Kansas or something. Uh, and he says it's very helpful to use the lesson for that too when you're mind wandering. And yeah, he's saying when you're mind wandering, you're siding with weakness. That's really deep. Who talks about that? You know, because it's just so taken for granted, you know, being somewhere else. Like in some little deep ego dive there. That's ego diving, Jesus. He said, yes, that is ego diving. Whenever the mind's wandering, because it's blank, like he says, it's really blank. So it's helpful just to keep asking him. Thank you, Jesus, for coming so we can just keep doing this deep reflection to get, just let that Holy Spirit's washing machine wash out all the personal identity. Thank you, all the reflections of divine inspiration coming through and just being open to Jesus. It's beautiful. We love you all.